April 17th and 18th. During both of these days, when we had a continuance of raw and pleasant weather, with the same cold wind from the north, we observed many of these large masses of ice in the river, which was much swollen and very muddy. The time passed unpleasantly and we made no way. Thornton appeared to be dying, and I now resolved to encamp at the first convenient spot, and remain until his illness returned. We accordingly at noon this day drew the boats up a large creek coming in from the south, and formed an encampment on the mainland. April 25th. We remained at the creek this morning, and went to the great joy of us all. Thornton was sufficiently recovered to go on. The weather was fine, and we proceeded gaily through a most lovely portion of the country, without encountering a single Indian or meeting with any adventure out of the usual course until the last of the month. When we reached the country of the Mandans, or rather of the Mandans, the Minnetarees, and the Onaways. For these three tribes all lived near the vicinity of each other, occupying 5 villages. Not a great many years ago, the Mandans were settled in 9 villages, about 80 miles below the ruins of which we passed without knowing what we were. Seven or 8 on the west. 7 on the west and 2 on the east river end, but they were thinned off by the smallpox and their old enemies, the Sioux, until reduced to a mere handful when they ascended to their present position. Mr. R. gives here a tolerably full account of the Minnetarees and Onaways, or Wasatunes, but we omit it, as is differing in no important particular from the ordinary statements respecting these nations. The Mandans received us with perfect friendliness, and we remained in their neighborhood the 3 days, during which we overhauled and repaired the grove, and otherwise refitted. We also obtained a good supply of hard corn and of a mixed color, which the savages had preserved through the winter in holes near the front of their lodges. While with the Mandans, we were visited by a Minnetaree chief called Wakarasa, who behaved with much civility and was of service to us in many respects. The son of this chief was engaged to accompany us, an interpreter, as far as the Great Fork. We made the father several presents, with which he was greatly pleased. Editor's note. The chief Wakarasa is mentioned by Captains Lewis and Clark, whom we also visited. On the 1st of May, we bade adieu to the Mandans and went on our way. May 1st. The weather was mild, and the surrounding country began to assume a lovely appearance with the opening vegetation, which was now much advanced. The cottonwood leaves were quite as large as a crown, and many flowers were full bloom. The low grounds began to spread out here more than usual, and were well supplied with timber. The cottonwood and common willow, as well as red willow, abounded, with rose bushes in great plenty. Below the low grounds on the river, the country extended into one immense plain without wood of any kind. The soil was remarkably rich. The game was more abundant than we had ever yet seen it. We kept a hunter ahead of us on each bank, and today brought an elk, a goat, 5 beavers, and a great number of plovers. The beavers were very tame and easily taken. This animal is quite a bon bouche as an article of food, especially the tail, which is of a somewhat gluttonous nature. Like the fins of a halibut. A beaver tail will suffice for a plentiful dinner for 3 men. We made 25 miles before night. May 2nd. We had a fine wind this morning and used our sails until noon, when it became rather too much for us, and we stopped for the day. Our hunters went out and shortly returned with an immense elk, whom Neptune had pulled down after a long chase, the animal having been only slightly wounded by a buckshot. He measured 6 feet in height. An antelope was also caught about dusk. As soon as the creature saw our men, it flew off at the greatest velocity, but after a few minutes stopped and returned on its steps, apparently through curiosity, and then bounded away again. This conduct was repeated frequently, each time the game coming nearer and nearer, until at length it ventured within rifle distance when the shot from the prophet brought it down. It was lean and with young. These animals, although of an incredible swiftness of foot, are still fat swimmers and thus frequently fall victim to the wolves in their attempts to cross the stream. Today we made 12 miles. May 3rd. This morning we made great headway, and by night had accomplished 30 full miles. The game continued to be abundant. Buffaloes in vast numbers lay dead on the shore, along the shore, and we saw many wolves devouring the carcasses. They fled always at our approach. We were much at a loss to account for the death of the buffaloes, but some weeks afterwards the mystery was cleared up. Arriving past the river where the bluffs were steep and the water deep at their base, we observed a large herd of the huge beasts swimming across and stopping their motions. They came in a sidelong manner down the current and apparently entered the water from a gorge after half a mile above, where the bank sloped into the stream. Upon reaching the land on the west side of the river, they found it possible to ascend the cliffs in the water beyond the depths. After struggling for some time and endeavoring in vain to get a foothold in the steep and slippery clay, they turned and swam on the eastern shore. Or the same kind of inaccessible precipices presented themselves, and where the ineffectual struggle to ascend was repeated. They now turned a second time, a third, a fourth, a fifth, always making the shore at very nearly the same places. Instead of suffering themselves to go down with the current, in search for a more favorable landing, which might have been found a quarter of a mile below, they seemed bent on maintaining their position, and for this purpose swam with their breasts at an acute angle to the stream and used violent exertions to prevent being borne down. At the fifth time the crossing, the poor beasts were so entirely exhausted that it was evident they could do no more. They now struggled fearfully to scramble off the bank, and one or two of them had barely nearly succeeded. When, to our great distress, for we could not witness their noble efforts without some commiseration, the whole mass of the loose earth above them caved in and buried several of them in its fall, without leaving the cliff in better condition for ascent. Upon this, the rest of the herd commenced with a lamentable kind of lowing or moaning, a sound conveying more of a dismal sorrow and despair than anything which it is possible to imagine. I shall never get it out of my head. Some of the beasts made another attempt to swim the river, struggled a few minutes, and sank, the waves above them being dyed with the red blood that gushed from their nostrils in the death agony. But the greater part, after the moaning described, seemed to yield supinely to their fate, rolled over on their backs and disappeared. The whole herd were drowned. Not a buffalo escaped. Their carcasses were thrown up in half an hour afterwards upon the flat grounds a short distance below, where But for their ignorant obstinacy, they might so easily have landed in safety. May 4th. The weather was delightful and a fair, warm wind from the south. We made 25 miles before night. Today, Thornton was sufficiently recovered the boat to assist in the duties of the boat. In the afternoon, he went outside with me into the prairie on the west, where we saw a great number of early spring flowers, of a kind never seen in the settlements. Many of them were of a rare beauty and delicious perfume. We saw also game in great variety, but shot none, as we were sure the hunters would bring in more than was wanted for use, and I was averse to the wanton discretion of life. On our way home, we came upon 2 Indians of the Assiniboine nation who accompanied us to the boats. They evinced nothing like distrust on the way, but on the contrary had been frank and bold in demeanor. We were therefore much surprised to see them, upon coming within a stone's throw of the pirogue, turn, both of them suddenly round, and make off in the prairie at full speed. Upon getting a good distance from us, they stopped and ascended a knoll, which commanded a view of the river. Here they lay on their belly, and, resting their chins on their hands, seemed to regard us with the deepest astonishment. By the aid of a spyglass, I could minutely observe their countenances, which bore evidence of both amazement and terror. They continued watching us for a long time. At length, as if struck with a sudden thought, they arose hurriedly and commenced with a rapid flight in the direction from which we'd seen them issue at first. May 5th. As we were getting under way very early this morning, a large party of Assiniboines suddenly rushed upon the boats and succeeded in taking possession of the pirogue before we could make any effectual resistance. No one was in it at the time except Jules, who escaped by throwing himself into the river and swimming to the large boat which we had pushed out into the stream. These Indians had been brought upon us by the 2 who had visited us the day before, and the party must have approached us in the most stealthy manner imaginable, as we had our sentries regularly posted, and even Neptune failed to give any token of their vicinity. We were preparing to fire upon the enemy when Misquash, the new interpreter, son of Wakarasa, gave us to understand that the Assiniboines were friends and were now making signals of amity. Although we could not help thinking that the highway robbery of our boat was but an indifferent way of evincing friendship, still we were willing to see what these people had to say, and desired Misquash to ask them why they behaved as they did. They replied with as many protestations of regard, and we at length found that they really had no intention of molesting us any farther than the satisfying ardent curiosity which had consumed them, and which they now entreated us to appease. It appears that the 2 Indians of the day before, whose singular conduct had so surprised us, had struck with sudden amazement at the sooty appearance of our Negro Toby. They had never before seen or heard of a blackamoor, and it must therefore be confessed that their astonishment was not altogether causeless. Toby, moreover, was as ugly as an old gentleman as ever spoke, having all the peculiar features of his race: the swollen lips, large protruding white eyes, flat nose, long ears, double head, pot belly, and bow legs. Upon relating our adventure to their companion, the 2 savages could obtain no credit for the wonderful story, and were about to lose Castaic forever, as liars and double dealers, when they proposed to conduct the whole band to the boats by way of vindicating their veracity. The sudden attack seemed to have been the mere result of impatience on the part of the still incredulous Assiniboines, for they never afterward evinced the slightest hostility, as yielded up the pirogue as soon as we made them understand that we would let them have a good look at our old Toby. The latter personage took the matter as a very good joke. Then we went ashore at once and naturally leave us, that the inquisitive savages might observe the whole extent of the question. Their astonishment and satisfaction were profound and complete.